Mr. Chair, we have started the live stream and we do have the minimum amount present required for quorum at this time. However, as has been noted, that 2 members will need to leave the meeting at 10. So at this point, if they were to leave the meeting, we will lose quorum and the meeting will end. We do have some people who have still yet to arrive to the meeting and hopefully will arrive. So perhaps we can get the members who are present to turn on their cameras and then we can start. And I believe Mr. Taylor is also set to arrive soon. I had to resend the Zoom invite to him.
Okay, so you're ready to start?
Certainly. Oh, and we have Miss Demitor has arrived, so we're in good shape right now. So okay. I'll start just by providing the introduction of the meeting. So we do have quorum. We do currently have regrets from, or not in attendance, are Janine O'Reilly, Moya Dumville, and Donald Mitchell. And as I mentioned, Donald Taylor should be arriving shortly. In terms of attendance from staff, we have with us Jennifer Campbell, the Director of Heritage Services, Allison McMahon, the Civic Collection Technician, Ryan Leary, Senior Planner, Philip Prell, Intermediate Planner, Alex Browse-Thompson, Planner. You have myself, Derek O'Shea, the Clerk, filling in for Beth Fawcett, the normal Clerk for the committee, and Julia McCautry-Jansman is our meeting host. We do have, I believe, 1 applicant/agent in attendance, and there are no members of the public currently in the gallery. Now, we'll just allow Ms. Campbell an opportunity to introduce a new staff member to the Heritage Services Department. Ms. Campbell, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you so much, Derek, for the opportunity. Yeah, I actually want to introduce 2 staff members that I don't think the committee has had an opportunity to kind of formally meet. The first Derek just provided was Philip Perel, who's joined us as an intermediate planner with the City of Kingston in the Heritage Services Department. So we're really happy to have Phil on the team. He's a great asset and a great help, and allows us, we talked about this last year, having a 3rd planner and the opportunity that would provide to us to be able to, do a little bit more with our portfolio. The other person that Derek didn't mention, but is also in the meeting today, is Kevin Gibbs. And Kevin Gibbs has joined the team just last week. He is the manager of heritage programming. And so for those who've known me historically, when I was the manager of cultural heritage, this is a growth of that role in the new Heritage Services Department. So we're really excited to have Kevin on the team as well. So I hope the committee will have opportunity to get to know them. I know they're very excited to be working with you all. Thanks so much.
Good, thank you very much, Jennifer, and welcome, Philip, welcome, Kevin. Ready to go then, Mr. Clerk? We call the meeting to order. Item 2 is the approval of the agenda, and there are a number of things here. Firstly, under communications, you received this morning an email from Frontenac Heritage Foundation for your consideration, so we will add that to the agenda formally. I have been asked, because of the timing problems this morning, if it's possible to switch items 7A and 7B. And Dr. Campbell, that's probably your call on that one. It means that we would look at the fees and charges item before the Alison McMahon talking on the city collection.
That makes perfect sense to us. Thank you. Okay,
so in that case, if we will, I guess we don't change the agenda as such, but we will deal with 7B before 7A. I'd also draw your attention to page 150, the printed page 150, which has an article by Don Taylor. And the pages 152 and 155 and so on, all of which look at the changes to the Ontario Heritage Act. And I'd also thank you, Ryan, for the resource package that you sent out. And I know it's far thicker than anything that you want to have printed. And I wonder if at some time we could consider an information meeting going through all of that. So with the 2 changes, the addition of the email and the switching of 7A and 7B, I look for a mover to approve the amended agenda. And I see Jennifer, seconded by Councillor Oosterhoff. Further discussion? Seeing none, those in favour? And that is 7 hands, I believe I see. Everybody's got their video on, yeah. And so you have an agenda. Now, I have a question on the minutes, and I don't know if you can answer this, Derek. I cannot find the July minutes, and I wonder if they were in fact circulated. Does anybody have a copy of them? What has happened here then is that when we canceled the August meeting, we forgot to distribute the July minutes, I believe, unless somebody can correct me. Okay, silence. So in that case, we will have to omit item 3. And if you could note, Mr. Clerk, that we will look at the July and the September minutes in October.
Mr. Chair, just to make this clean, and this is a procedural thing, we could technically require a motion to defer approval of the minutes until the next meeting. So if we can just get a mover and seconder and then a vote, we can do that all above board.
Good. So moved by Ted Smith, seconded by Councillor Doherty, that the approval of the Heritage Kingston meeting 092021 be deferred until the October Heritage Kingston meeting. Everybody happy with that one? Those in favor? Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Thank you. Jennifer, are you asking a question? Or voting? No, okay. Pecuniary interest, anybody immediately know that they need to declare? And my usual comment that if it comes up during the meeting, please do so immediately. Presentations, I believe there are none. Delegations. And so briefing. Briefings, we will go on to 7B. First of all, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to wait for a moment because we do have a PowerPoint. Wonderful. Yeah, so I just wanted to take some opportunity to kind of talk through a little bit about the report that you've received as an information report. Remembering as a committee that information reports for us are actually acts of consultation. So this is the opportunity for the committee to provide feedback, make suggestions, et cetera. And what we're proposing or discussing in this report is not a proposal that would be necessarily or directed to be enacted as part of the 2022 fee schedule at this time. So we're bringing this report forward more for awareness and getting some feedback on the potential to look at an alternate approach or a different style or schedule of our fee structure. So next slide, please. So just to quickly review, we maintain the Heritage Register as required by the Ontario Heritage Act. And as many of you know, that includes approximately 1,230 designated heritage properties under both parts 4 and 5 of the Act. As well, we have 331 listed properties. Of course, those are not subject to permits when they're looking for alterations to their properties. But they are also part of our considerations. We have 54 heritage easement agreements, and those range in size, scope, and scale from things that can involve multiple properties and intersecting categories and inventories like the Queen's University Heritage Easement Agreement to more individual property designations and additional conditions. And then, of course, you all know we have 3 heritage conservation districts. So just a little bit of a synopsis on the kinds of and the scale and the breadth of the work that we're looking at when we think about possible implementation of additional fees. Next slide, please. And so, of course, it's our job within the Heritage Services Department of the City of Kingston, with support from the committee and, of course, from council, to ensure that we have compliance with the Ontario Heritage Act, particularly in this case and in this discussion today, relevant to alteration to some of those built heritage properties or associated cultural landscapes. And this can involve everything, as you know, from built heritage protections, conservation considerations, development potential, and land use planning within the city. And so that can also involve intersection with the Planning Act, as well as city policies and processes that are relevant to those applications. And so, as you also know, a large portion of our work, as this committee is such a big part of, is about alterations to heritage properties, either Part 4 or Part 5. Next slide, please. So in 2020, the committee will remember, late 2020, there was discussion through the fees and charges update for 2021, which is a council-approved schedule of fees enacted and implemented by the city for various services, there was a proposal and an acceptance to introduce a $300 heritage permit fee, and this went into effect on January 1st, 2021. And that fee, the amount of that fee was based on preliminary work completed by Watson and Associates, who assessed city planning processes and costs associated, the real cost to the city to process various planning applications. And at that time, those planning applications, there was a great amount of time, effort, and energy and detail provided. The heritage aspect, though, of that planning system was there was a baseline assessed. And this was a bit of an amalgam of all heritage processes. And at that time, the high-level recommendation coming from the Watson report or the analysis suggested that a baseline heritage fee of $300 for applications would be appropriate given the amount of real cost to the city for the processing of those pieces. Next slide, please. And so that's just a little bit. I'm certainly not an expert in the methodologies of Watson and Associates. But at the time in 2018, the approach taken, this is an activity-based costing methodology. Essentially, they break all of the processes down for the processing of various applications. They look at the different groups of the city that need to touch an application, provide comment, the timing that's associated with that, site visits, et cetera. And then they come up with a real cost in terms of the city's efforts and energies at those various levels. And what's interesting is that we've now asked Watson and Associates to update their 2018 model in consideration of some additional details from the Heritage Services Group regarding the applications that we process largely through this committee. And what's interesting, I think, about that, and first, it's our first sort of real snapshot of the costs associated with the processing of heritage permit applications. What we've learned is that the heritage categories we've asked them to consider in this most recent assessment brings the total real cost to the city of Kingston and arguably to the tax base or connected to the tax base is about $650,000 annually to process heritage permit applications, alterations to HEAs, heritage easement agreements, the processing of delegated approvals and emergency works, et cetera. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, losing my earbud here. So the categories of service that we asked Watson to look at are certainly not, there were several more than the ones I'm showing here, but these are the ones that we thought were most interesting to bring forward for the committee's consideration at this time. So we broke service categories into including emergency approvals, delegated authority approvals, both regular and complex, heritage permit applications, regular and complex, heritage easement agreements, regular and complex. And then we also added Heritage Committee pre-consultation. And it's important to note that pre-consultation with Heritage Committee is not a legislative requirement. It's an option for complex applications and developments. It's something we certainly encourage people to meet with the committee early, particularly on complicated proposals. And that is not a requirement, but it does, of course, take a lot of time, effort, and energy to help to support those applications. But we do think it brings us all to a better understanding of the work and gets a better outcome and better preservation and conservation of those heritage assets. Next slide, please. So hoping you can see this, it's a bit small on my screen, but this is directly from the report. And what you see here are those costing categories from emergency approvals to complex heritage easement agreements. And for each, you see the real cost per application. So remembering that we are currently applying a $300 fee to anything that would qualify for a heritage permit application or approval. So you can see, for example, an emergency approval, the real cost is $420. We are currently charging a $300 fee, which represents approximately a 62% cost recovery to the city for the service offered. And then by comparison to a delegated authority or a delegated approval request, it costs approximately $1,500. We are charging a $300 fee, and then you see the corresponding 18.8% cost recovery, and so on down the line. And you can start to see that where the uniform application of a $300 fee doesn't really correspond directly to the amount of the real cost. And that's really what we were looking at, trying to learn more about, is how could we perhaps right size or streamline or tailor fit the fees to best align with the kind of work and the real costs associated. So what you see in the next column next to current fee is next to the current percent cost recovery is a proposal staff are bringing to the table today which again is not meant to be enacted in any sense of immediacy at this time, we're looking for feedback, is an adjustment to the fee schedule to consider those cost recoveries. So we're trying to correct a little bit that $300 to nuance it, as I've said, to the amount of time, effort, and energy, and the cost to the tax base, recognizing, of course, that heritage works and permit applications are not something where we would ever be looking for 100% cost recovery from the applicant. Heritage is an interesting category of service opportunity or service provision, in that we know that heritage buildings also are an essential component of Kingston's identity, part of cultural tourism, part of why people enjoy our community, the vitality associated with it. We certainly don't want fees to discourage the maintenance and repair of heritage facilities and structures. So that's why we're not proposing something that might be a more complete or larger cost recovery. So just by way of comparison, for planning services in the city, non-heritage related, there is usually a 45 to 49% cost recovery on the fees associated with planning processes. And what staff have considered before you today would actually come in at about a 12% cost recovery. So not at all what we're thinking in planning, where the direct benefit to the user is much more individualized, let's say, with a private property development, et cetera. So what we're proposing today, or not really, what we're proposing for discussion today is a conversation where we would see emergency approvals at $100 at 21% cost recovery. Delegated authority would remain at $300 at 19% cost recovery. We would then have a complex delegated authority. This would be in details in the report, when there is more than one aspect of the delegated authority bylaw, more than two actually being brought forward through a single application. So essentially, instead of seeking multiple applications, which would be approved under the bylaw, they would be combining it into a single application, which is why the fee would be slightly higher. Heritage permits then would be at 400% for regular, and for complex, it would be $700. $300 for pre-consultation with the committee. Heritage easements agreements would be $400 for regular or simple ones. And then complex ones, for example, with Queen's University would come in at about $1,000 in this proposal. Next slide, please. We also wanted to draw the committee's attention, because I know when we talked about the fee in 2020 and leading into 2021, there was some discussion at the committee, and rightfully so, about financial barriers and trying not to bring additional hardship or impact on property owners. So I wanted to remind the committee that we do have two existing programs to provide financial support to property owners. Those are the Heritage Property Grant Program, which offers up to $5,000 for works of repair and alteration to existing maintenance on heritage properties. And then we have the Heritage Property Tax Refund Program, which can be used for those groups that have HEAs who are also doing work to improve or repair their properties. Next slide, please. So what staff are proposing is that if this expanded fee schedule were to be enacted in the future, we would like to see council consider that 10% of each fee collected would be directed to the reserve fund that annually supports heritage property grants. We are currently drawing down that reserve fund as we distribute those $5,000 grants annually up to $50,000. So we want to also identify ways to start to grow that reserve fund. And we think that starting with a 10% direction of fees into that reserve will at least start to see us contributing back into that fund then that assists those who require or request financial support to be able to have that support in a more ongoing basis. Next slide, please. We also have at the City of Kingston, and this has not been enacted before for heritage purposes, the Municipal Fee Assistance Program. This is a program the city offers. It reduces fees and offers waivers for programs and services to residents in low-income households. And again, our proposal to council, if and when these fees could be enacted in the future, would be that we would adopt this Municipal Fee Assistance Program as being applicable to heritage fee waivers. So if someone is qualified within this category, within the city's system already, they would be able to have 100% waiver of any associated permit fees that would come through this committee process. Next slide, please. Well, that's all I have to say about that, apparently. So happy to take questions, but to hear feedback as well. I know there's probably a range on this, and I just wanted to also say, given the the considerations of time today, I just want to let the committee know we will be bringing this information forward to council. The intent is to bring it as an information report to council for their awareness as well. Not a recommendation at this time, it is an information report. But if you don't have opportunity today to share all of the details of your comments, we're also very happy to receive them by email. And then we can help to include those in the updates that we'll be providing to council. So thank you.
Good, thank you very much, Dr. Campbell. Did I see a hand there, Councillor Oosterhoff? Yes.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Appreciate Jennifer, your presentation. I guess I just want to know, it's great to know that's going to come before council for discussion too. And I do find it really interesting, specifically related to heritage fees, and that I don't see it there, that there's going to be actually a reduction. So it's going to cover the recovery costs are actually, it's not a good economical situation. And I will struggle with that for sure. So I will try to engage with you, Jennifer, and your team as to understanding what's driving that. Though I understand what we're talking about. I understand the value we have placed on it. I'm wondering if we're leaving money on the table, so to speak. And I think that's something I would like to see us grapple with as a committee. And that's on my mind, really.
Good, thank you. Other questions or comments, Don Taylor?
Yes, I think the committee has already covered this.
Yeah, we've got a poor connection with you, Don. You're breaking up.
Sorry, if I get a bit closer, are you hearing me?
That's better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think the committee has already expressed its concern about this. There is a big difference between heritage permits and building permits. Someone who applies for a building permit for a garage is desiring increased space and facilities. For heritage permits, in most cases, they are required by city bylaw and provincial bylaws to maintain their heritage attributes. And they're required to do this at their own expense. Putting a fee in front of them as well means that they will not do the kind of maintenance and upgrading, renovating that they should be doing, and that they will oppose designation of their buildings when they have the opportunity, and the possibility of new districts, new heritage conservation districts will, I think, disappear. I can't imagine any district saying, yes, let's all become a district so we can pay $400 whenever we want to fix up our property. So that's one argument. The other thing is I'm kind of dismayed that staff have looked at other municipalities and you might say adopted worst practice. The ones, St. Catharines and Richmond Hill are not known for their, significance of their heritage properties. City of Ottawa is a bit different. They were the ones that began that, and they do have a lot of heritage properties, and they do have a lot of knowledgeable people. If you look at the City of Ottawa fee structure, what you see is that the fee is zero for projects that meet the definition of, sorry, I'm trying to read this, renovation, up and sorry, it's a bit dark in here, restoration in accordance with the standards and guidelines for conservation of historic buildings. And it's zero for alterations that are in line with Heritage Conservation District statements of cultural value and with the heritage attributes of the property. In other words, for alterations that owners are more or less supposed to do, no fee. If they want to put an addition on the back that has some heritage impact, then there is a fee. So, you know, that makes considerably more sense to me. I mean, I could accept fees for some kinds of heritage-related applications, but not a blanket free fee that hits everybody. If you do that, you'll just kill renovations of heritage properties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Jennifer. I agree with Don. By the way, I think it's important to encourage renovations and not discourage them. But unfortunately, Councillor Oosterhoff and I have to go. But before I go, I wonder if you could, for people, residents living who own properties, heritage properties, and who may be listening to this meeting, I wonder if you could just go over the proposed fee chart and give a bit of an explanation in layman's terms of what the delegated authority might mean and what a complex versus a normal application may mean, because I think there's a lot packed into that. And I'm not sure if everybody really understands what it is that we're talking about. And I think for council meeting, that may be also very important. Thanks.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I can certainly talk about this. I just want to loop back very quickly. Councillor Oosterhoff, you had a really important comment there about the revenue and the possibility of diminished revenue. One of the things I just wanted to share that we have costed this out based on the average number of annual applications. If the fee that was being proposed or is being considered was to be adopted, if that fee schedule was enacted by council with those additional costing categories, we would actually see double the amount of revenue incoming as a result. So even though it is a reduction of cost at the more simpler end of the scale and an increase at the higher end, the net revenue produced is actually twice what's currently being produced through the $300 baseline fee being applied across the board. And I know both councillors have to go, but I will explain a little bit more the categories so that anyone watching can speak or understand them a little bit better. So thank you. So starting with emergency approvals. Emergency approvals are when someone has an emergency happening at their property. It's a problem. The back porch may fall down, the steps are falling apart, they need emergency intervention. And there is a heritage consideration on the property. So that's when staff approve that through a delegated process, but it's because it's a health and safety or life safety compliance matter. Moving on from that then to regular delegated approvals. Regular delegated approvals, we're considering essentially anything from the delegated authority bylaw, and this committee knows that there's been a lot of discussion about the use of the "and" term in the bylaw, which allows applicants to take many different pieces of heritage work and link them together in a single application. If the delegated approval application only includes 2 or fewer, that would meet that regular delegated authority threshold and fee. If it was 3 or more, then it would move to that complex consideration because of the amount of staff time that are required to move those more there's multiple items then that staff have to consider whether or not those conform or comply with that delegated approval bylaw. Moving on from there then to the regular permit application fee of $400. That speaks to applications that are coming in as alterations under a Part 4. They involve, a sort of a specific suite, if you will, of attributes, or they involve one property. So sometimes we receive permit applications for more than one listed property at the same time, or we receive an application, for example, maybe some of the large houses on King, where we see multiple alterations happening within the same permit application. So when we see alterations to multiple listed attributes, or values, then that would move us into that complex. Otherwise, for example, if it's an addition to a porch or an alteration to an existing garage, for example, that would meet the regular application. And then moving to the heritage easement agreements, the same sort of philosophy is being applied there. Thinking about the heritage easement agreements, that are really single property based and are subject then to consideration by this committee and then renewal upon expiry. And then the complex heritage easement agreements are ones where we see, like with Queen's University is a really strong example of that, where we're seeing, tens of buildings being connected. And then through that easement agreement, Queen's is allowed or able then to pursue some approved heritage works through that streamlined process. So that's where we're seeing that highest fee category of $1,000. And then, as I noted before, pre-consultation is the last one, and that's the opportunity to come before committee and to present those applications. We tend to see pre-consultation in advance of a complex application. This committee, for example, has seen in the past pre-consultation requests from the P4W, the Union Park development, which will be coming back to the committee again in October. So in that situation, with a large complex property development like that, that's where we would be applying the $300 pre-consultation fee with the committee. Also, just an important part to note as well, Council, of course, always retains the authority to waive any fees of the City of Kingston through an approval process that they then lead. So there is always that opportunity as well.
Good, thank you very much, Jennifer. Yes, Eric.
Mr. Chair, if I may interject, just with briefings, this is typically an opportunity for the committee members to ask questions. For comments, there will be an opportunity later in the agenda when the report comes up. I know we bent the rules a little bit for the councillors that were here,
Yes.
but going forward for the next two briefings, thank you.
Okay. Further. And okay, good. Thank you very much then, Jennifer, for that. And we move to 7A, and Alison Mahan, Civil Collection Technician, going to speak on that committee. Alison?
Thank you. I'm just waiting for a PowerPoint. So thank you so much. So I'm just here today to kind of go over the recommendations that are mentioned in the report as it speaks to the Civic collection. So next slide, please. So just a little bit of a background information. Back in 2019, I'm sure many of you remember that we've updated the Civic collections management policy. And the biggest change was that we further separated the collection into 4 distinct categories. They are primary collection, secondary collection, working collection, and the general heritage assets. And I'll go through a little bit more detail in the coming slides about what each of these categories means. Next slide, please. So the first of which is the primary collection, and this consists of accession and catalog objects that have the highest level of historic value. They support the heritage integrity of an individual site, collection, and/or museum through their direct and meaningful association to the museum and its mandate. The perfect example of this would be the mayor's portraits there on display throughout City Hall, as well as the mayor's chains of office. Next slide, please. The second category is what we call the secondary collection, and it again consists of accession and catalog objects that have historic value, but they may not directly relate to a site, collection, or museum. An example of this would be the woodworking planes that are part of the McLaughlin Woodworking Museum's collection. Next slide, please. And the last two categories are actually categories that do not have any accession objects. The first of which is a working collection. And this is reserved for objects that are exclusively used for educational or interpretive purposes. They're deemed consumable assets, essentially. Next slide. And the last category is what we call general heritage assets. So again, these are non-accessioned objects that do not meet any of the criteria for the Civic collection, but they are, however, useful for the operations at a municipal museum or Kingston City Hall. The example would be a lot of the furniture, chairs, and sofas that you see on display throughout City Hall. Next slide, please. So in the report, there are 4 collection processes that are covered. 2 of them are acquisitions to Civic collection. 1 is a recommendation of objects to be transferred to the general heritage assets collection. And 1 is just an update on an addition to the general heritage assets collection. Next slide, please. The first item that we are recommending for the collection is a 48-inch by 48-inch oil painting by Robert Blenderman, who's a Canadian abstract and art cityscape artist that's done a number of paintings of Kingston and the surrounding area. The painting itself is of McDonald Park, and it shows the aftermath of the 1998 Kingston, the ice storm that impacted Kingston and the surrounding area. And you can see the painting there itself. Next slide, please. We are recommending this for the secondary collection. The painting itself captures a pivotal event in Kingston's history, demonstrating the environmental destruction of the 1998 ice storm, as well as it stylistically is a departure from the other Blendeman works that we have in the Civic collection, further demonstrating the artist's range of work. Next slide, please. The second item that we are recommending for the Civic collection is a chrome-plated ceremonial shovel that was used for the sod turning at the inauguration of Wilson Park subdivision in 1957. You can see pictures of the shovel itself there. Next slide. And again, we are recommending this for the secondary collection, mainly because it promotes the public understanding of the history and culture of the city of Kingston, municipal government, and more generally, the tangible and intangible heritage of the Kingston's community history, culture, standards, and values. If anyone had a chance to visit City Hall in the last year or so, you might notice that this was on display in one of the niche cases there. And then we also have an interest in it for a possible upcoming exhibit. Next slide, please. Next item mentioned in the report is a recommendation to transfer a collection of objects to the General Heritage Assets collection. The collection of objects includes 55 chairs, 11 tables, and 22 decorative objects that are used as display pieces throughout City Hall. Next slide. The reason why we're recommending to transfer these items to the General Heritage Assets is because they were originally accepted as General Heritage Assets, but were incorrectly cataloged as primary collection. They do not meet the criteria for primary, secondary, or working collection designations. They're essentially consumable heritage assets that are poor quality reproductions with little documentations, and many are redundant due to multiples in the primary collection itself. Next slide, please. And the last item that is mentioned in the report is just an update on an item that we accepted for the General Heritage Assets collection. Working collection and General Heritage Assets objects that come in follow a different procedure than items in the primary and secondary collection, essentially because they are not formally accessioned into the Civic collection. They're brought in for interpretation purposes only. So this item was actually just brought in the spring. And it's a bronze plaque commemorating the amalgamation of the two Kingston-based daily newspapers, the Daily British Whig and the Kingston Daily Standard. Next slide, please. Again, this is a General Heritage Assets object. We have the intention of hanging the plaque in the lobby of the British Whig building, which would again add additional heritage value and interpretation to the interior of the space. Thank you very much. That's all I have for the collections updates.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have a recommendation to make to council. You have it printed there. Do we have it on the slide?
Mr. Chair, that will come up under the actual report item. This is just the briefing. So this is a chance for people to ask questions. And then when we get to the report, we can do the vote on the recommendation.
Where does the report appear?
It is the next item of business. So you could technically, if you want to, at the consent of the committee, sort of combine the two items if you'd like.
I'm just looking on the agenda I've got. We come through, we have this recommendation, and we then have the consultation on the next possible steps for the fees and charges, but we don't go back to the Civic collection. Yeah, it makes more sense to do it here, I think, if that's possible.
Yep,
Well,
that's fine, as long as the committee, it is business item 8A1 is the Civic collection acquisition and deacquisition. So if the committee is okay with it, you can combine it and just do the normal process now. And there are no public members, so no public comments.
So under 8A1, you have the recommendation. I won't read it all the way through because it's basically what Alison has just said, the one painting, the shovel, and then the other items to be accessed in different ways. Do I have a mover for that motion? And I'm looking at Ted, and seconded by Jennifer. Thank you very much. Discussion? Any further questions or comments or thoughts or And seeing none, then I will call the question. Moved by Ted, seconded by Jennifer, that the recommendation as printed be approved and recommended to council. Those in favour? And that is all 6, and so nobody is opposed. So thank you very much, Alison, for that. And we're now on 8B, consultation on the possible next steps for the fees and charges for heritage planning services on the Ontario Heritage Act. This is for information only. Are there further questions on this? So Jennifer, do you want to add anything else?
Sorry, and thank you. Just having some troubles with my buttons there. No, I just thank you for the feedback we've received so far. I know that we sort of broke a little bit of procedure there and did some questions and some comments, but just want to reiterate that if anyone has more information to share, we can certainly receive that over email, as I mentioned previously. And I did want to thank and acknowledge Don Taylor's point about the discussion that was held at the committee in 2020 and into 2021 about the implementation of the first fee. And so we will also be looking to that as well as part of a second pass reflection on previous feedback from the committee. So thank you.
Good, thank you. So committee, you've got a, Jane, I see you had a hand up. I'll be with you in a moment. You've got a chance to make further comments to Jennifer. What sort of timeline do we have on that? Do you have a date when it goes to council?
Yes, thank you. We are trying to get it, I believe, to the council meeting in the first council meeting in October.
Okay.
But I think if I could get comments back by the end of the week, that would be wonderful.
Okay, so comments should go as fast as possible. Jane, you had a hand up.
Yes, I just was going to go back to one of Jennifer's comments and ask how is this fee structure going to be applied to the many older designations which really don't have any heritage attributes listed?
Yeah, that's a really, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, sorry. Getting a bit too conversational. Thank you, Jane. I think that's a really great question. And I'm not going to suggest that we understand how it will be applied in every single instance of some of those older designations, as committee has seen when they come forward. We have to kind of review them against where we're at today with designations and then follow the path that the OHA has kind of outlined, the Ontario Heritage Act, for those older definitions. I still think that staff would be able to review and think about what that would look like in today's kind of situation, and then consider the complexity of the application at hand. So I would hope that it will always be a bit of a case-by-case analysis in those regards. But you're right, those older designations do certainly they open up a different opportunity to reconsider how we used to list properties and how that aligns. So I think one of the pieces that we could take away from this comment and this question is actually perhaps we need to include some language in any future proposal, if one was to happen, that would address kind of what happens, kind of a bit of a caveat, like with those older properties, just so that there's transparency for everyone.
Good, thank you. Further questions, and you've got the opportunity to contact Jennifer in any way. Otherwise, thank you very much for that and for the report. We move on to 8C, heritage assets, anything from the Bumphouse Steam Museum or the McLaughlin. And seeing none, we move down to statutory business and the application for 244252 King and 41 William. And who is presenting this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will be the one presenting the application on the Kilbourne, as it is known more generally at this time.
Okay, thank you, Philip.
Okay, well, hello, everybody. Nice to meet everybody formally this time, even though it is over Zoom instead of in person, as much as we would all prefer that in the before times. But getting back to business here. So this is an application for 244 to 252 King Street East and 41 William Street. So it is kind of a mouthful, so I'm just going to be shortening this to mean the Kilbourne, and this will be referring to the entire property with all 4 addresses, as will be shown on the next slide. Next slide, please. As we can see here on the context map, the property is a corner lot, which is kitty corner to the Frontenac Club Hotel. Due to the Kilbourne's location, it's a highly visible building, and according to the city's official plan, it's on the edge within 10 to 15 meters of the downtown business district. This intersection has several prominent buildings, including the Kilbourne. These buildings act as an informal entranceway into the city's downtown core when entering via King Street East going north. Next slide, please. As we can see here, we have a couple pictures, some of which were from my site visit. Other ones are from Google Street View because they were better depending on the season. As you can see with the 244 King Street East and 41 William Street, it goes around the corner. So part of it is on King Street East, part of it is on William Street. And then 250 and 252 King only fronts on King Street East. Next slide, please. This will be the only slide I read off of, I promise. So this property is designated under parts 4 and 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act through bylaw 84-256 and through bylaw 2015-67 as part of the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District plan. The HCD plan inventory notes that this subject is considered significant to the district. Despite both properties being on the same lot, each building have separate property descriptions and historical associations, but they share contextual values as part of the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District area plan. A couple of these notable ones include the brick side-by-side construction, the fine architectural detail, including decorative panels, multiple bays, high stone foundation, diverse fenestration, unique dormer styles, among other things. They're 19th century upper middle class owners and inhabitants, and that they were constructed by local architects Gillian and Gillian and Newlands. Next slide, please. One of the main parts of this application is related to adding a roof overhang over one of the rear entrances to the street. According to section 4.3.2 of the Old Sydenham HCD plan, it provides direction on building exteriors, such as to keep rainwater from continuous contact with masonry walls by retaining roof overhangs. Apologies. And section 4.3.6 encourages owners to ensure positive drainage away from all foundation walls. In this case, these policies work together to demonstrate the city's goal to protect masonry and foundations from damage created by the elements. By having a new building overhang, the applicant seeks to protect the masonry and foundations, both of which are considered heritage assets for this property. Attributes, my apologies. It is anticipated that the roof framing will be anchored to the masonry with all penetrations protected by flashing above. Like the existing roof overhang over 252, unit 252, as you can see above in the picture, it will be very similar to that one. If necessary, for structural support, a simple triangulated wooden bracket will be installed under the free corner and anchored to the stone foundation wall. All works that could impact masonry shall be completed in accordance with the city's policy on masonry restoration heritage buildings. Next slide, please. I wanted to take a moment to say that I really appreciated the committee's comments regarding the potential view of this part of the property from the public realm. And I wanted to clarify what potential part is viewable when in this area. As you can see in the pictures to the left, provided by the applicant herself, and on the right, pictures taken by myself on September 1st, it shows that there is a small portion of the roof overhang that could be visible when viewed from the public realm. To view the entire portion of this roof, it would require being on private property. Members can view the supplemental submission provided by the applicant, which in the agenda is actually listed under emergency approval. It actually discusses this part in detail, and this is where the picture is from. Or members can look at Exhibit A in the committee report near the end to show my own pictures when I did a second site visit to the property to confirm committee's comments. Next slide, please. Okay, so this looks like a whole lot of stuff on the tables, of course, but what it demonstrates is that the applicant has taken an extensive analysis of the potential aspects that may require repair only after existing paint has been scraped away. So these are estimates. However, based on these estimates from the applicant who has extensive knowledge of the property and who has knowledge of building practices, she's done her best to estimate these potential conditions before any paint has been removed. The applicant is seeking a broad approval in the form of this application to avoid repeatedly coming to staff and committee in order to consolidate time and costs. A condition has been added to this approval requiring that the applicant get approval by heritage staff of any wood elements that require like-for-like replacement, or if the proposed paint colors deviate from existing colors. Importantly, the city's policy on masonry restoration and window restorations in heritage buildings shall be followed during the course of these works, and that condition has been added to this proposed approval. Next slide, please. These are some select photos that I took during my site visit on July 30th, my first visit to the property. Based on the information in the previous slide in those tables, I'm going to try to demonstrate some of those elements with these pictures here. So to the left are photos of the entrance and balcony over the entrance to 244 King Street East. According to the condition assessment provided by the applicant, the porch requires repainting and some board replacement due to rot, and the balusters are in varying condition, requiring repainting to having rot that requires the base removal and replacement. The stained glass window, also associated with 244 King Street East, appears to have rotted sills and trim. These changes have been captured in an emergency approval issued association with this application and will be shown briefly on the next slide. The below middle image is associated with 250 King Street East and is suspected that the soffit of the bedroom gable has either peeling paint or rot. Again, we cannot determine until look eventually in the future. The upper right image is associated with 51 William Street, which potentially has peeling paint or rot on the right newel post. In addition, other windows associated with 41 William Street will require repainting. Finally, the bottom picture on the right shows the entrance to both 250 and 252 King Street East. The entire porch is in poor condition. The steps, fascia, soffits, decking, balusters necessitate review. The emergency permit was issued in association with some of those features and will be discussed next. Next slide, please. Here's a brief summary of the actual approval itself that shows that this approval is specifically associated with stabilization repair porch steps, the westerly-most newel post at the bottom of 252 King Street East, and the replacement like-for-like of the wood trim around the dining room window, the one that has the half circle stained glass at 244 King Street East. According to the agenda, this item is also listed as 8F and will be discussed again there. Next slide, please. So this is one of our standard recommendations template, but there are a couple things to note that I want to draw to your attention. Due to the end of the building season and the extensive works that are required for the Kilbourne, it is recommended that council consider this approval at the next meeting, at the 21st of September, instead of the meeting that would happen in October. This would save about 2 weeks of time from the October 5th meeting, and despite this change in procedure, staff believe that the works required for this prominent building that acts as an informal entrance to downtown Kingston when walking in King Street East should be prioritized. In addition, looking at the first section here as well, point 1, it is a broad approval, meaning that most of the wooden features not associated with previous applications in the last couple of years are captured in this approval to, again, consolidate time and cost, as noted earlier in the presentation. Next slide, please. This is our recommendation, of course, talking about all the potential conditions here. These, of course, include the standard ones for windows and masonry works, as noted before, the potential for a building permit, and that staff will be circulated should like-for-like replacement be required for these features, and if there's any change in paint colors, along with other associated requirements as well. So staff will still have some control, even though this is approved, and we will be making sure that the replacements are appropriate for this important building. Next slide, please. So thank you, everyone, for your time. I wanted to say thank you again for having me, and great to meet everyone here, and I'm looking forward to any questions that you may have on this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Members, can you confirm that your dash comments have been correctly incorporated in the agenda? Don, is that a yes? Good. And Jane, thank you very much. Members of the public, and I believe that that is Ms. Chalmers, the one here, wishes to speak at this time.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm attending in order to respond primarily to questions. The one point I would like maybe to discuss with the committee has to do with the reference to the support of the roof at the back of 250 Unit 1 King Street East. The recommendation, I believe, still refers to a wooden bracket. I'm concerned, maybe it's a terminology issue, I'm not sure. My interpretation of a bracket is in fact a triangular construction where there's a vertical element that is supported, fastened to the wall of the building. And in this case, the wall that it would be fastened to is rough stone. I'm concerned that any wood element that would be attached to rough stone would leave gaps which could collect water and dirt and be subject to accelerated deterioration. So again, this construction is going to have to go for a building permit, and Heritage will see those drawings. But I wondered if we are constrained at this point to using a wood bracket, or if alternatives are possible, such as a steel brace.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee members, your comments or questions or whatever. Don Taylor?
Yes, I think we should be very pleased with the care with which the applicant and staff have gone over the alterations and repairs that are needed here, and we're pleased that the owners have the commitment to do them. Just a couple of comments. I think some of us were a little disappointed that no contractor was identified in this work, and we all understand that not all contractors are equal. I think the point is that when a contractor or tradesperson is faced with a wooden element that shows a bit of decay, most contractors would say replace it. Someone who has a commitment and an understanding of heritage features and decorations would say it can probably be repaired and would look good and would last as long as anything else. So that is the important point, that the people who are making the decisions on these wooden elements understand the importance of preserving original fabric when possible. A couple of other comments. I'm kind of sorry that so much is made of the visibility of this little roof at the back from the street. Visibility from the street is important, but it's not the only thing. The owners and residents of the building need to, I think they are aware that they are in a special building, and if they perceive that just because public can't see it, doesn't matter what it looks like, that's not the kind of sort of heritage sort of message that we're dealing with. So, some of our comments are really meant to be suggestions. It'd be nice if there were an attractive bracket supporting that little roof instead of something very utilitarian, but I think we're not proposing to require it. So that's that one. So I think the other point that was raised was the question of balusters along the staircases along King Street. They were certainly there originally. And again, I think the committee is saying it'd be nice if those balusters return, but there's other considerations and possibly building permit considerations that come into that as well. So I'm satisfied to leave, I'm satisfied with the recommendation and the conditions, and I'll certainly be approving those recommendations. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Don. Philip?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Apologize, having some mute issues there. I wanted to just make a point that if there was a change from wood to steel for the bracket, that could be captured under condition 8, which shows that minor deviations that do meet the intent would be possible. Of course, it matters where it would be, and the size it would be, and further information. But I did want to mention that it could be captured under that to address Adair's point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions from committee members? Oh, you're a very good group today, aren't you? I would just comment that, this is such a detailed application, and we all know the problems that are going to appear as you get into it. And we're prepared, and certainly the staff is prepared to make whatever help can come to that. Final comments from committee? Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Seeing none then, I look for a mover for the recommendation, as we've made no changes to it as printed on pages 4, 5, and 6 of the agenda. Moved by Ted Smith, seconder by Paul Bamfield. Further discussion? Philip, you're not able to speak at this point now that we've got a motion on the floor, unless it's absolutely critically urgent.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just wanted to make sure that I make clear that this would also be a recommendation to go on to the next council meeting. Just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Yes, okay, we understand that this will be expedited to the very next council meeting. We have a motion moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion on it? And seeing none then, those in favor of the motion as printed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that is 6, and nobody voting against it. So thank you, Ms. Chalm, for that detailed application and for coming today, and good luck with that amount of work. That brings us down to delegated authority heritage approvals. A report for information only. It's on page 88. And who's speaking on this one?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mo, Mr. Rock. Well, good morning. Hey.
Yeah, this is just an information report. I wanted to just give you a quick little synopsis. I won't take much time here. But as committee is aware, the council has delegated a number of minor alterations to the Director of Heritage Services for approval under certain clauses of the Heritage Act to properties that are designated either individually or as part of a district. It's important to note, and just as I think mainly for the new members, delegated authority approvals are just that, they're approvals. We as staff or the director cannot recommend a denial. So if there's a challenge with an application that we as staff cannot support and the director cannot approve, it does get directed to council for approval, for consideration, and through Heritage Kingston for consultation. So what is before you? Just quickly, heritage permits, of course, are the city's best tools to conserve the valued heritage resources in our city. These approvals are a public service that staff provide owners of heritage properties and to the general public. We strive to provide this service to property owners as efficiently as possible. Delegated approval authority is granted, as I mentioned, in relation to a list of alterations that are in the procedural bylaw, which are considered minor. And if often requests for approvals come as more than one minor alterations within a single application, and where appropriate, these permits are approved under delegated authority. And This is consistent with the language and intent of the procedural bylaw, and it also helps support these property owners to help consolidate their permit requests in a single application, and nowadays with a single permit fee. And it's also for staff to efficiently move these minor alterations requests forward in one group. So on average, a heritage permit approval through DA, through delegate authority, takes about 3 weeks for an application to be to receive, to get approval, where one that goes through committee and then council for approval can take up to 2 months or more for approval. So it is a bit of a time savings. So according to our procedural bylaw, we are to report out DAs to council on a biannual basis. And that's what this report is. I won't go into specifics, but just for your information, between the 1st of November last year and July 15th of this year, the city granted a total of 57 applications for alterations, new construction and demolition to designated heritage properties. And of those, 29 approvals were granted through the delegated authority process. In the last 8 months, these delegated authority approvals included repairs to existing features such as porches, rain gear, masonry, wood detailing, windows, doors, roofing, and the rebranding and replacement of existing signage. All the alterations, I'm happy to say, conserved and enhanced the cultural heritage value of identified resources, and were undertaken in accordance with accepted best practices in heritage conservation. That includes the city's policies on window renovations and masonry restoration. So the specifics of the approvals that were granted are in Exhibit B of your agenda, and there's a little table in our report that sort of breaks down by type, and we're happy to take questions, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions to Ryan on this report? Very pleased to see it, because I know it's a question about numbers that has come up frequently. Oh, Don, yes. Don, you're on mute still. There we go.
Sorry, I'm with you now. I think, yeah, I just wanted to bring your attention to Shirley Bailey's addendum item. Delegated authority is a rather contentious issue and is under discussion with the review committee. And in particular, I noticed that the list that was submitted today doesn't include the big projects at the corner of Brock and Wellington and 115 Lower Union, which I assume postdated the time stamp of this one. So those two projects are ones that really were of considerable concern to the heritage community. And it's unfortunate that we don't get information about the details of applications of any delegated authority applications. So the committee can't really judge how, the details of them, but that's more a comment than a question. But I guess perhaps Ryan could confirm that those two properties I mentioned, I guess, will be on the next list of delegated authority approvals. Thank you.
Ryan, I think, is checking his list.
I am, Mr. Chair. I'm a little surprised they're not on this list. So I'm just going back myself to see. I don't see them.
Well, thank you for a truthful answer.
Can I get back to you, Mr. Chair? I'm going to pull up our tracking sheet and just double check to see where they fell. So
yeah, no, that's fine. I would also draw the committee's attention to the printing on pages 94 to 117 of the procedural bylaw for heritage. I'm sure you didn't all read it since the agenda arrived, but it's well worth looking through because there are some interesting little bits and pieces there that we do question at times, and you can see why we do these things. Any further questions on the delegated authority heritage approvals? And seeing none, Ryan, I would thank you and leave you carrying on looking. And if you do find an answer, you can get back to us sometime. We'll move on to the working group reports, pages 112 to 117. Are there any questions on these before we receive them? And they're always, again, worth reading through because you see what else is being done. Seeing no questions, Mr. Clerk, am I right in this meeting? One motion will receive all of them?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I look for a motion then to receive the working group reports, please. Moved by Don Taylor, seconded by Paul Wenfield. Thank you. Any discussion, questions on these? And seeing none, then the motion to receive the working group reports as printed in the agenda. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is 6-0 carried. Thank you very much. An update, we're back to Ryan, regarding emergency approvals. 24425 King.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that was the emergency approval that Mr. Prowse spoke to in his presentation for the Kilburn property. Some minor wood structural concerns that were needed urgent attention.
Okay, thank you. The City Hall facilities led work. Who's talking on that? Dr. Campbell.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we just wanted to share a bit of a quick update, just a verbal update on this, because we know committee members are always paying attention to our heritage properties. And certainly City Hall is one of our large heritage properties here in the city of Kingston. Yeah, so we're just sharing today that we have been and have had some discussion with the facilities maintenance group at the city, who are preparing this fall to do some work on the bridge from Market Street. To the side door, it is the accessible entrance into City Hall. There is no intersection of this work with the actual building envelope. It is some limited concrete repair on that bridge, and they're actually going to be closing the bridge to work on the cooling systems, which are sort of located beneath the bridge if you've ever walked over it into City Hall. During that work, the access to City Hall will be by the rear door that enters onto the market, through a door that is not usually the accessible door for the city. So that will be the temporary route for entrance into the building for accessibility reasons. We just wanted to bring this to committee's attention to let you know that we are certainly paying attention to it. We have worked with the facilities team to ensure that there is no heritage consideration needed here, but just wanted you to know that. And if anyone has any questions or would like to be connected with the facilities group to learn more about that ongoing work for accessibility purposes, we're happy to make that connection for you. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I thought you were going to comment on the front steps because I was absolutely shocked at the state of the stone when they started taking those steps apart. We knew that they leaked. We knew that they flooded the basement, but it's like pebbles. If you get a chance to look, it's just frightening what has happened over 180 years to those stones. And when we get other people in saying, you know, the stonework on my house is deteriorating, just remember what's happened to City Hall there. I don't realize it's right on the lake. I realize that they get storms, etc., but I certainly was shocked. Konovsky Bakery. Who's going to talk to us about that?
That'd be me, Mr. Chair.
That'll be you. Thank you.
Just deviating slightly, I found the permit that Mr. Taylor asked about. It was reported out in December of 2020 when we did the last report. That's why it's not on your current agenda.
Thank you.
And also, you should see those stairs from the underside. They're even scarier. So we wanted to provide the committee with a brief update on the progress of the rebuilding of the stone building known as Konovsky Bakery at 670 Princess. Which you all know collapsed Christmas Day last year. We are pleased to inform that the reconstruction works have recommenced after a short delay in July. The restoration plans, specifications, and supporting documentation were submitted to Heritage Services and Building Services. and a detailed review of the plans and documentations found that they are in compliance with the terms and intent of the Heritage Easement Agreement that was approved by Council. This undertaking has become a bit of a hybrid project between replication and restoration of the heritage resource, as so much of this building needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. And in fact, there is a new foundation underneath the whole structure that will not be seen, but it is there for structural purposes. However, we are ensuring that the owners are rebuilding the building to be as close to the original profile and specs as possible, including the alterations that were approved through the Heritage Easement Agreement, which are still underway, with as much of the existing stone as possible. But undoubtedly, it is a new structure that suffered from a major collapse and does need to use new limestone to supplement the old. And for those who aren't real familiar, freshly quarried Kingston limestone comes out quite dark, almost black when it's under the stone. So this, once it is exposed to the elements, it will fade in relatively short order to more closely resemble the aged limestone. If you're interested in an example, Ontario Hall at Queens replaced a significant number of their stones, I think about 3 years ago, maybe a little less, and they are already starting to fade quite nicely. So just wanted to look at. The other thing I wanted to point out is those who have keen eyes might have noted the difference in size of the stones and quality of the stones between the western wall on Victoria Street and those on the main elevation on Princess Street. The stones on the western wall are smaller than those on the north face. This is in keeping with the original design of the building, or the original builders, as was common in the day, put extra effort into the main facade of the building, using the nicest, largest stones to showcase the building, while using lesser quality stones for the elevation deemed, I guess, less important, sort of the western or side wall. The owners and their masons, Salomon masonry contractors, I understand, took a great care to actually replicate this minor detail in the restoration, which is kind of exciting. You may also find it interesting that following the removal of the 1960s stucco that was all over this building, it was discovered that the openings on Princess Street elevation were less altered than we previously thought, and were actually quite possibly were original. So as required by the easement agreement, the owners are recreating the collapsed portion of the building to as close as the original proportions as possible. And that includes those, what we think are original openings. So the Heritage Services and Building Services staff continue to work with the owners to review and confirm details of this restoration works and to monitor the progress of the reconstruction. Indeed, I don't think this project has turned out the way we'd all sort of hoped it would. But when completed, I think we'll have a lovely reflection of the history of this area in this building. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the update we have for that one.
Okay, thank you very much. And are you also giving a Union Park project update?
Yeah, quickly, I am. Given the publicity of surrounding this project and the owners' efforts to gain public interest in this property, we thought it was worth giving a quick update. Just to set the stage, because I'm not sure how much of you are familiar with this. This is a 3¼ hectare parcel at the southwest corner of Union and Sir John MacDonald Boulevard. It's known as the Prison for Women, P4W for us locals, which closed in 2000. The owners are proposing to divide the subject property into 5 blocks. One block will contain a 10-story seniors continuum care building, which will be on the west or the rear of the prison building. One block will contain a 10-story hotel with some small scale commercial uses on the south of the prison, so between the prison and the museum. One block will be retained for some open space features, and this is on the southwest portion facing King Street West. And then the block to the northeast corner, right at the intersection, is to be reserved for a future development site, and there are limited plans for that at this point. The final block, of course, is that containing the Prison for Women structure, which currently includes the administration wing, which is the one with the big cupola on the top, the cell block building and then the later annex addition on the south of it, of the building. The building is to be adapted or reused for 24 residential units. The existing annex wing is proposed to be demolished to facilitate the construction of a new addition that'll be on the same footprint and similar size. The plans are available for the Planning Act application are available through Dash, and we will be circulating those to you in the very near future. In terms of next steps, you might want to be aware that there is an upcoming meeting for information. Sorry, the City Planning Committee is hosting a public meeting on October 7th. This is available to live stream on the city's website if the committee is interested. We are also planning to bring an information report to this committee next month with additional details for further review and input from you folks. In advance of that meeting, staff have also arranged a site inspection for any of those members who have not seen or been inside this facility. And that is scheduled for Monday, October 18th at 10 a.m. And I'll be sending out an invitation on that here momentarily as well for anyone who's interested. Again, that's the 18th at 10 a.m. Finally, now the information report that we're presenting next month, while we do and will be strongly encouraging you to provide input on this project at an early stage, because it's always helpful to get it out at the earliest as possible. It will by no means be the last chance this committee has for input. We are anticipating that future heritage applications may come forward, and that could include a heritage easement agreement for this property. Certainly heritage permit applications will be necessary, and there is a possibility of an amendment to the existing designation bylaw, all of which come through Heritage Kingston for consultation. So with that, Mr. Chair, I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
Good, thank you. Any questions on Union Park, which I still think of as P4W? Well, old-fashioned folks, you know, it takes a lot to make me change. Seeing none then, if you've got any, you can always email Ryan with them. I don't believe there are any motions. Are there any notices of motion? And seeing no movement, other business. Correspondence, there is a number of pieces of correspondence there that I've referred to, particularly about the changes in the Heritage Act, Don's article, and next summer. The next meeting, October the 20th, Wednesday, 9:30. Look for a mover to adjourn. Ted, Jennifer, thank you all very, very much. See you again in a month, if not before. Take care all. Bye-bye.